Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
Beware of Greeks putting in shifts, as the lovely Ellen of Troy once said. This is the Arsenal Vision podcast. I'm not Elliot Spit. Sorry, Elliot. I quite like that one, but we're going to have to redo that. Elliot Spit. I like that. So,
I thought that was your joke.
No, it's quite good, isn't it? Oh, that's quite good. I should have just gone, shouldn't I? All right, here we go. Right, today we're going to review the Olympiacos game with Clive and with Scott, who we'll introduce shortly. Helen of Troy had a point. Not only that, she had a rockin' ass and rockin' hard tits, but just so you don't think I'm being inappropriate, so too did Brad Pitt in the film Troy. Scott, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah,
Good.
Quite the intro.
Good. Clive, are you still there? Are you sticking with the podcast? Are you joining us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Good. Right, so we have.
I'm ready for ancient history lesson with Paul.
Oh yeah. I'm your man. Helen of Troy, Carthage, the whole works. I got it covered. So, heck of a game. I ran it through the Crapatron 4000. It's very hard to assess a game like this. And I'm going to kick off with Clive here in a second here, because he has some thoughts on us playing an away kind of team. My own first pass on this game was that it felt kind of odd the first time through. I watched it a second time, as I tend to do. I quite liked it the second time around, and I appreciated a little bit more of what was going on. But we had a rocky first, 15 minutes. But then you might do against Olympiacos. Very good team, apparently, in Greece. Maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't survive in the Premier League, but they've been rocking it in the Greek top league this season. Basically, nobody's got a result at their place worth a darn apart from Bayern Munich. Generally, British teams have struggled in Greece, apparently, and certainly at Olympiacos over history. We're one of the few teams to have got a victory over there. So it's one of those interesting games to assess in terms of how good was it. And I think on reflection, we should be very pleased with that result. Not just the result, but the performance. Different lineup, quite a bunch of changes. So, Clive, you had an interesting tweet about away setups. There were a lot of changes here. Some of them were enforced on the manager with Torreira and Ozil not being available. And that meant that Willock was going to be our number 10, which is a little bit of a new look here. We had Lacazette up front, returned to the lineup. Aubameyang on the right and Martinelli on the left. As opposed to the last time they went out, it was Martinelli on the right and Aubameyang on the left. A couple of other big ones. Socrates a right back, and Guendouzi returned to the midfield. So a couple of returns here to the fold. What's your take on this away team or an away approach versus the cards that were handed to the manager?
Yeah, I just felt that with Ozil out, obviously he's having a baby, not him himself, but his wife. And Torreira forced to be ill. I just thought, okay, what have we got here? Tobias didn't start. And I just thought we looked quite workmanlike across the pitch. Everybody was like players that generally produce a 6 to 7 out of 10 all of the time. We have a number of maverick players that can give us a 9 and maybe give us a 2. But I just thought, looking at Martinelli, you're going to get a level of performance. Lacazette has just really found a little bit of confidence. Guendouzi was brought back in. He's quite a hard-working player. Obviously, Xhaka's a hard-working player. The fact we went Socrates as a right back, we've seen it, I think, versus Leeds. I don't like it, but it seems to work in a strange way because we tend to, defend into a back three. So he's really playing right centre half primarily. So it's just how you build up and how you defend. And so I just felt we were quite, with Willock as well. I just felt we were quite energetic, quite workmanlike, the sort of team that I like away from home. And I just feel sometimes when we go away, we focus on what we're going to do on the ball. When we lose it, we get picked off. It looks at our away record the last couple of years. It's not great. So this was a step forward in my regard, even though it wasn't pretty. But I felt we were competitive, and I think that's really important.
Very cool. So, Scott, you did a bit of an XG analysis on the game as always. They were very, very busy in the first 15 minutes against us. Pretty intense. It reminded me a bit of they're not at Atletico's level, but when Atleti took on Liverpool, it seemed to me the most important thing they were trying to do was knock Liverpool out of their rhythm, to make them feel different to any way they'd felt in any previous game this season at the Wanderloo or whatever their stadium's called. The crowd were going crazy. We saw that at Olympiacos. Lots of energy, lots of pressing, pushing back, make them aware that they were in a different spot, a different location, out of their comfort zone. I think this game was played at 10 p.m. in the evening. So here's an Arsenal team showing up and thinking, this all feels different. Plus, we'd quite a different lineup. And I kind of think it was what Atletico was trying to do to Liverpool and succeeded. And it seemed like we really took a while to find any kind of rhythm here. What was your kind of feel for the game and the trajectory?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much their style that they wanted to do. They wanted to go out there and really kind of blitz Arsenal. And it really did almost work. You know, they had the Balbuena shot in that second minute that Leno made a great save on. They had a header that, after the fact, it looked like it was chalked off as offside that went just over the bar. So they had two really good chances in that first, opening 5 minutes, and they were all over Arsenal. And, it took, a little bit for Arsenal to kind of calm down to get into the match. But then after that, I thought that Arsenal did a really good job of not necessarily exerting dominance, but at least having some sort of control on the match and not letting Olympiacos get into dangerous situations. Overall, I think I had the XG here just under 1.86 to 0.31. If you don't, take out the offside one, which I really like the way that they do that in Europe, is where the linesman puts up the flag after the fact, kind of a thing, so you can play on, so it really doesn't screw things up if you do have to go to VAR, which is nice. So I like the way that they do that. That's probably about a 25% chance. So you kind of think, all right, well, maybe the Olympiacos about a half a goal on XG to almost 2 for Arsenal. So Arsenal were deserved winners, but it was a little bit nervy in that opening minutes. But I thought after that, everything settled down and really looked more in control. Not necessarily dominant, but at least more in control.
Yeah, and Arteta talked about his discomfort with the way the game started. And how they were hurting us from the wings with crosses from the sides. And I guess that makes sense. On the one side, you've got Saka, who's not an out-and-out fullback, and you have Socrates. I mean, one of the interesting challenges for Arteta he wanted to support Saka. But
yeah, it was Socrates, and he was, with Aubameyang in front of him. So that was definitely an area early in the game that got, exploited.
Yeah, and I want to bring Clive in on this thought that how much did Socrates not being able to tuck into midfield like our normal right backs maybe leave us a little more exposed through the middle, because we were still basically trying to allow Saka to get forward, and especially in the early stages it seemed like they could kind of run at us through the middle and up the wings. Arteta mentioned the wings, but we seemed pretty vulnerable up the middle too, with a little bit of a different central midfield lineup of Xhaka plus Guendouzi, who has his wandering ways. Actually, the eye test, I think Guendouzi was trying to do what he was supposed to be doing. I don't think I would slam him on this one. I think he was all right. I just think maybe we weren't as comfortable rotating with the right full back to give us cover, etc. We just didn't have that synchronicity we normally had.
Yeah, I felt that what Aubameyang did on a couple of occasions is that he recovered inside rather than recover outside. And by recovering inside, he left his fullback 2-on-1. And what he had to do is just recover into his space and that we can debate. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about this later. We can debate if that's an effective use of Aubameyang, covering in the straight line on the touchline. When you got your superstar centre forward, your goal scorer has scored more goals than anybody in the country since he joined, apart from Salah. You've got him running up and down on the touchline, chalk on boots. I'm not sure that's the best use of him, but we'll come back to that, no doubt. And he just recovered to the nearest man, and that sometimes was the man inside, when actually he needs to recover to a zone. And that, in fact, he didn't fill his zone, just left his fullback vulnerable on a couple of occasions. Easy cross shot, save, corner, another corner, shot, parried out. It just sort of grew from there. So it's a minor detail, but I'm sure we'll talk about it later, Paul, really, about the setup, the team, the players individually, etc. So I'll save some of that for a bit later.
Yeah, good stuff. Scott, we played with Aubameyang from the right here last time out when it was him and Martinelli. Martinelli played from the right. Aubameyang didn't seem to be enjoying it in the same way he did. Or put another way, it seemed like he works harder from the left than he did in this game from the right. And I'm not slamming the guy. I mean, for a striker, he's been played, you could say, out of position and asked to do a whole lot of defensive work. But I just didn't feel like he had the same enthusiasm for the hard yards in this one. And yet when we switched him to the left in the second half and brought on Pepe or whoever, it seemed like he got in the groove, and he's certainly a major part of our goal in the second half. Do you have any thoughts on the Aubameyang versus Martinelli on the right versus the left? Sorry, that's for you, Scott.
So I guess it helps to unmute yourself to make you be able to.
Good.
So one of the things, I definitely think that on the left he seems to be more comfortable. I think it, kind of goes into the idea that he's more of a forward over a winger, so he can run the channels kind of thing, do those, inside to the outside runs, or sorry, other way around, where he goes from the left half space into the middle, do those kinds of runs to be able to take advantage of his ability, instead of when he's kind of out there on the right because he's right-footed. He just doesn't have that same ability to do those runs. I think I saw him. He seemed that he was way more just wide when he was out on the right versus when he came in the left. He's a little bit more tucked in. So I think that just plays into his strengths a little bit more. I'm not sure on the defensive side if he seems to do more on either side. Preferably, through the middle is better. But if we're going to have to pick a side, I guess from the left, he's able to play more as a forward from the left instead of a winger. So I prefer that.
Yeah. So does Klaus. Clive, so one of the things you and I have our various frustrations with over time is we'll get off a podcast and we won't have talked about certain players. Let's work from the back out for a change, because Leno had a stormer, right?
Yep, he did, and let's just think it through. So, we've all been fans of the club for many years. Where I felt we've approached certain games with not our best players, even going back to the League Cup final against Chelsea, where we played a youth team against them. I think it shows a level of arrogance, and we're so loyal. We do the things like FA Cup goalkeepers, and we do everything the right way. But I was so pleased that Arteta picked Leno, because I just watched.
Can I just add at this point, on the emotional side, I felt it was a bit wrong, right? And I don't think that's a correct opinion, but it's funny how I've been conditioned to think we have an agreement, we have an understanding that come hell or high water, we've kind of committed to Martinez, and I felt it was like, I don't know, like cheating or like we'd broken an agreement. Of course, I'm not in this conversation.
Mate, shall I tell you what, mate? This for me was the moment of the night. This is exactly what we need to do. We need to rewire that crap. You don't get any rewards for being nice. We need to win. We need to recover. I just watched, previous to our game, Manchester United draw. Was it Ghent, or Bruges? I think it was Ghent away, or did Bruges, or I think it was Bruges. And basically, the first goal, the goalkeeper comes out and he lost all his distances. It wasn't his fault. The number one thing you lose when you don't play as a goalkeeper is your distances, when to come out. You do lots of shot stopping, lots of saving in training, but you don't do that in match decision making distances. And I felt if we didn't, by bringing Martinez in, who doesn't play enough for that size of game, we need to be fair and say, no, this is too important to the club. Best goalkeeper comes in, sharp, all distances, defenders know him, let's pick him. And that tells me that we are a serious football club again. Not some finishing school, not some place where you come to learn and go somewhere else. We're here to develop our name, re-establish our name. And for me, the moment of the night was the manager saying, nope, he's playing. He's the best goalkeeper. I want to win. Why am I playing people that can lessen my chances to win the game? Doesn't make sense. So I thought it was brilliant, and I fully supported it.
Yeah, I think it's indicative of something, and I think you're right about what it means. I mean, I liked it. I like that you're an utter bastard, Clive, and I like that Arteta's willing to be an utter bastard. His cold black eyes and all that shit. When you look at the betting for the Europa League, because I guess what I took out of that is he's going for it, right? So we weren't even favourites to beat Olympiacos at one stage. So I was just curious. I'm looking at the betting right now. Not saying it tells us anything significant, but right now the Euro.
We're building trust, aren't we, Paul?
Yeah.
We're building trust.
Yeah.
No one trusts us yet. This is Arsenal. Yeah. Why trust us? We're flaky. We blow it under pressure. While we're all hopeful what we're seeing, but why trust us now? It's not big enough data set, right? It's not big enough. There's some of us, like me and like many of us people listening, we're quietly really excited, but we don't want to say too much just yet because it's too soon, right? So, but yeah, why should anything change from the outside? We're on the inside, and we're just starting to believe. Yeah. So on the outside, we shouldn't see too much change in those numbers.
Yeah. Fuck them, Clive. That's what I say. The people on the outside, fuck them. But anyway, we're up to 9-1. Given that we were like less than favourite to beat Olympiacos across two legs, things are on the up. So United 7-1, Sevilla's 8-1. Inter Milan 6-1. So we're right in the frame. People are beginning to take notice, but it tells me like Arteta's leaning into this. That's why he went with Leno. I was surprised. I didn't think that was going to happen. I don't know how I feel about it still, but I think I like it. Scott?
I was just looking at the 538 rankings, and they have Getafe as the number one team to win the Europa League right now, which is pretty crazy to me.
I think it's pronounced Getafe.
It could be. Oh boy!
Only in your house, Paul.
So Getafe are like number 3 in La Liga. I had to check.
No, I mean they're a good team. They're
quite good. Sevilla's on 40 points and Getafe is on 42. I'm not getting outmaneuvered on Getafe this time, but I mean no biggie. But it makes you think. He's leaning into Leno to start because he's really going for it. But realistically, probably 9-1, 8-1 probably is our odds of winning this. So those are the calculations a manager makes. So, Scott, to give you a more juicy jumping off point here. So Mustafi and Luis were roundly derided individually as pairings. And when you look at the number of players that I guess you could say Arteta has fixed so far, which is about half our squad. He's ticking them off as he goes along. It's quite impressive. I think in the last couple of performances from Mustafi, you could say, you can see all the seeds of his own destruction. Like, it's not like it's all gone away, but it's a thin line for every player, and he's staying on the right side of it for the most part. What is it about Mustafi, do you think, that Arteta is leaning to? I mean, he's very front-footed. He's good at the headers, but he's also good at with a high line. He's pretty good at pushing up if he doesn't make the dumb mistake.
Yeah, he always has a few of those, and I was actually bringing that up today. Is that he really had probably a couple of bad decisions One of them, the foul that he committed right towards the end of the match, where he dove in and gave Olympiacos a free kick in a dangerous spot. There was one pretty bad pass that he made. So those are not going to go away. It's kind of like Xhaka in that same regard, that you just gotta take those kinds of things as givens and try to work around them when you're setting up your team to play. And I think overall, Arteta has done better in that. I got a little bit of pushback when I said that maybe he's kind of doing more to not isolate him. I think that was something that under Emery, Arsenal sitting deeper was not really something that fit his skill set. I think that you need to have a little bit more of a proactive kind of take on how you're going to do it. So, defense through possession, and then, when the other team has the ball, you actually use it to be more proactive, to go out and challenge him. I think that fits into Mustafi's role, kind of the way that, Koscielny used to do it. You had one guy that kind of sat a little bit deeper, kind of cleaned up things, and then you have one guy that goes out and challenges the balls. I think when you have Mustafi as the guy that goes out and challenges things, it gives him a little bit more, because I think some of the things that where he gets these mistakes defending is where he's kind of stuck in between the two minds. Is like, do I need to cover? Should I go out and get it? And then he kind of does nothing, and he gets stuck in no man's land. So I think that this has been a little bit better for him. I still do worry that he has the ability to just blow things up and absolutely kill you. But if we are limiting those opportunities to where it's once every 3 to 4 matches instead of once or twice a game, I think that's something that you can live with, because his passing ability is very good, and especially when you pair him with Luis. That probably gives Arsenal one of the, a very good pairing of, ball playing center backs. There's really not better players that I would really necessarily take over those two, just given their ability to pass the ball. I think that gives Arsenal a really good base to build things on. So I think if Arsenal are able to set up things with the tactics to be able to maximize their what they're able to give to them and kind of minimize their mistakes that both of them have in them, I think that it leads to a pretty good team. Overall, the last 3 matches, Arsenal have 3 clean sheets. Mostly that's deserved. Leno's had some good saves, but I think that Arsenal have really improved defensively. That's one of the things that has actually shown up in the numbers, is that, the defense has gotten better. The attack is still a work in progress, but if we can improve defense, you're going to see better results. And I think that's what you've seen. So Arsenal are unbeaten in 2020.
Yeah. Mustafi had more passes than anybody else. I think it was like 78. Now, maybe part of that was that to his left, Luis and Xhaka kind of spread the responsibilities for passing up on that side, as you would. But on the other hand, he had Guendouzi on his side, so Guendouzi likes the ball and he likes to pass too. So maybe it says something interesting that Mustafi was arguably something of a hub in this game. I haven't seen this many reformed players as we see under Arteta. I haven't seen this many reformed characters since Nikita Khrushchev took over after the death of Stalin in Russia. It's quite impressive just how many of these characters Arteta is displaying in a new light for us. And you could list them off, but we all know what they are. It's quite something.
What it's doing is he's challenging our analysis of players.
Yeah.
I think as fans, he's really challenging our analysis. Now, what people don't realise is we all love the club. So when the club hurts or the team plays badly, that colours our analysis on many times. And I've said things on certain players after a particular game. I've also said things that were completely wrong or completely right. And it's all coloured by that individual moment, individual game. But then you have to step back and say, actually, and I said this on the podcast, I said I don't see any difference between Mustafi, Chambers and Holding. Now, if I say that after Crystal Palace last year, people think you're absolutely crazy. Do you see what I mean? Holding's better, Chambers is better, blah, blah, blah. But in the cold light of day, I firmly believe that. I don't see any difference between all 3 of them. You could say all 3 of them are not quite good enough for the club. But what's happened is, at the moment in time, obviously one's injured and one's coming back from injury, Mustafi is the one. Yeah. And fair play to him.
Yeah.
He's maximised his performance. And Scott touched on it. If you're isolated as a defender continually, you're going to make more mistakes. It's just the stress of football. We've taken away the isolation, not just for him, but for many players, and that's why they're improving. No one's left on an island. There's always a triangle. There's always somebody supporting them, and that's the genius of coaching.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? We go from what you said, which is, I think we could all agree that Mustafi is not necessarily the level we want at the club, but we go from that to he's utterly shit, probably because he was being utterly shit. And you can say that about other players. I mean, Xhaka was goddamn terrible for a while, but and I think we know this, but you lose your mind, right? It's not just about the player. We all knew that Mustafi was at one stage somewhere between very good or passably good, depending on your opinion of the player. Same with Xhaka. We all rated him highly at one stage, and then we're all looking at this guy trying to work out what the hell it is. And
so Paul, that's a really good point on Xhaka, right? So just take ourselves back to last September, October, where he was named captain of the club. Half the fans in uproar, right? Booing him off the pitch for whatever reason. Let's not go too deep into it, because people will say, well, he did this, that justifies my actions, I pay my money. Well, I don't agree with that, but hey, here's what it is. Booing him off the pitch. He's now got a new role in the team, which none of us ever, not one of us, thought about. How we did say that we need to reduce his space, but I couldn't see him playing almost like a left half. No, I couldn't see that. I didn't see that. He's come back into the team, and everybody's just gone quiet, because now they can see what the players saw when they selected him as a captain. They can see the leadership. They can see the control. He's absolutely undroppable.
Yeah.
And he is undroppable, and that's the truth. So we don't always know. And so I just think what Arteta's done to many of us, he's made us look at ourselves. Think, shit, maybe, you know what, I didn't read that player right, and I think he's great, and it makes us add a little bit of humility. It doesn't make us unintelligent, it just makes us human, and just like the players, funny enough. And so maybe we need to get back to doing a little bit more what our jobs are, which is trying to be a bit more positive. I know the trauma of defeat drags us into negativity, but that's our way to say that. It's challenging our analysis of footballers, and I think we can all do better at that. All of us.
It's humbling in a way, because I mean, I've probably known as being quite supportive of Mustafi. I've generally always liked Luis, Xhaka, etc. But I kind of defend them on the basis that I remember when they weren't terrible, which looks pretty hollow when they are being terrible. And just, to me, it tells me about context, about kind of the ups and downs of football. It's who you're playing next to, the system that's been set up, how everybody's been coached, not just you. And when you look at the characters that have been reformed under Arteta, from Mustafi, Luis, Xhaka, help me here, Pepe to some degree, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, which is a really interesting one, because he was maybe the first player Arteta fixed, and yet we don't really see it. It took Socrates not only to have cramps in both legs, but then to twist his knee for Maitland-Niles to get on the pitch. But we won't get into that one right now. That might divert us, and we've kind of talked about that one before. And on. He's turned these players into something that maybe they were before, or maybe they weren't. Coaching's a very interesting thing, and Mr. Unai Emery, for all his comments about how the team ain't doing better than when they were under him this season, I don't think that's true anymore, and I think he's done himself a disservice by, we all understand why he says what he says, but when you look at individual player development this season from just a couple of months ago, Arteta's done a phenomenal job, and hopefully that'll start to show up in more and more results. Any thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, I mean, do you want to just make the clarification? It's not like I'm saying Mustafi is the greatest player, and that we no longer need to have a center back on our summer shopping list. I'm happy that he is now at least somewhat passable center back, and I no longer want to, pour bleach into my eyes when I see him on the team sheet.
Yeah. Look, me as his greatest defender, I don't think he's great. I think he's fairly good and fairly useful when he doesn't pull a Mustafi, and that he shouldn't be the reason our season goes tits up, basically. We don't have any players that on their own are enough, that a good coach shouldn't be able to find a way for us to be an effective team and regain our where we should be in the league, given a proper run. There's no one individual that starts for us that is enough of a problem that derails us, is basically my view. And I think when we all pick one player out and go for him, that's when my hackles, I think, that's when that characteristic I have comes up. I mean, I find it difficult to go against. I was thinking the other day, if I was picking the team, if I was the manager and I was picking the team and I was doing the pre-session, I'd kind of tell them what we needed to do, and then I'd say, listen guys, now you know what I want you to do. Could you among yourselves pick the 11? That way I wouldn't be the bad guy. But I do have a little issue calling out guys as players, but I can call out players in terms of performance, because I think they're all at some level passable. So Scott, I cut you off there. Interested in your take on Xhaka's role. So Arteta talked about Saka not really being a full back again, and we should wax lyrical on Saka, especially in the second half as he got going, and what he does. I think his delivery is really, really good. There was one game we had a little while ago, I think it was a cup game, I should remember the game, and his delivery was off, especially in the first half, and everybody kind of threw their arms up about Saka and his delivery, and I'm like, but he's actually got a uniquely high quality delivery, whether it's a high cross or a low cross, or it's on the end of a dribble, and he's showing it again and again at the moment, that he just has a level of quality. I don't truly see him as a full-back, but on the spectrum of your Trent Alexander-Arnold whipping in crosses, or a creator, as opposed to a player along the wing, and then just taking the context of how we allow that to happen with Xhaka and in this game Martinelli originally on that side. That's normally a good pairing, but it didn't super pay off in the first half. What was your take on the Xhaka and context, and also where you see his trajectory as a player?
So I think that Xhaka is an important player for Arsenal. He's one of the guys that actually is the connective player. So it's one of those things that's hard to put a great value on statistically, but he is the guy that will move the ball from deep positions into the attacking third. So I think that that's a pretty valuable skill to be able to do, and it's something that as you move the ball closer to the opponent's goal, it becomes harder and harder to do, and you could see that that's something that he does at a fairly high rate. It was something that we used to depend on Mesut Ozil a lot to be able to do for us. But when he was out of the team, we seemed to get kind of lost doing that. But I think actually moving Xhaka a little bit further back has allowed him more space and time to be able to play those kinds of balls, where he is not getting the instant pressure as soon as he gets the ball, where he can't pick his head up and go pick those passes, because that's something when he is given space and time. He is probably one of the best passers, at least, the top few percent in the world at finding those kinds of passes. So I think that being able to do that for him is good. He led the team in final third entries with 10. He had 7 progressive passes. So a progressive pass is moving the ball 20% closer to goal. I think that's a very valuable thing. He had 3 passes into the box, which is, second, only behind Saka, in being able to do that. So I thought this was a very good game for him overall. And I think that, Arteta is finding ways to be able to get him on the ball with good opportunities to actually move the ball up the field. by moving that back to a little bit more the Pirlo kind of a style.
Yeah, good stuff. So Willock was a very interesting topic. Elliot happened to voice the view that he was terrible, and then he dialed it back a little bit. He doesn't think he's Arsenal calibre. His calmer take was the best moments he has are good, but his level in between those moments isn't high enough. So when I was watching Willock, especially first time round, I was struck early on that his touch, he doesn't have the soft feet, he didn't control, he didn't have the touch, he spilled the ball, and at a time when Arsenal was struggling because they were pressing and we were spilling, it didn't help us. But on the other hand, this seemed to be a game that he grew into, and that his ability as an athlete to stride forward with the ball, his decision making on the counter isn't always great, but it's hit and miss. On the other hand, it seemed like a big part of why we pushed forward and why we got into the game. And after about 15 minutes or so, I thought we were clearly the better team and clearly the team voted most likely to do something in this game. Any thoughts, especially in the context of an away team where maybe we were expecting not to have as much possession against Olympiacos as we might have liked early on? Any thoughts on the choice, Clive, of Willock over Ozil, and was that an opportunity presented to the manager to go a different way, given that Ozil wasn't available?
So Willock, he reminds me of a classic academy player. So I've watched a lot of academy football matches, and sometimes you have a player that's just quite good. You can see it. When it comes to the crunch, they make a decision which is for them. It's not always the right decision. So they dribble, think, okay, they dribble, and they go, I call it the dark side. You go into an area onto your wrong foot where you're not maximising where you're going, but you're just feeling yourself a bit. So you go rather than to the light, you go to the dark. I think, no, get back on your strong foot, pop it and go. He just needs to simplify and relax and focus on the basics. So immediately when Willock plays, we compare him to Ozil. So there's not many players in the history of football that receive the ball in a half-turn better than Ozil. So everybody else in comparison is going to look crap. Going to look ugly, going to look unbalanced, going to look like they're falling over, because he has made his career of receiving the ball smoothly on a half-turn and taking it in one movement and moving on. So Willock looks ugly. He needs to work on that. Needs to be more consistent. He needs to work a lot harder on his preparation to receive the ball. Body shape, really key. Knowing his picture as the ball's coming, pop it, go. When he goes, he's now playing his game. He's playing the game that he wants to play. You want to go with me? Well, come and run with me then, because I think I can outrun you. And that's what he needs to learn. He needs to work a lot harder at the initial phases of his game, so that the good things we all know he can do, which is travelling, connecting, 1-2s, driving, they will become more apparent. So what we saw in this game was inconsistent receiving of the ball and inconsistent final movement of the ball, final decision of the ball. And so we got this mixed match of a game. But what we didn't get an invisible player. We got a hard-working player that was we could see him. We wanted more from him, but he wasn't letting us down on cutting off passing lanes. He wasn't letting us down on pressing. I felt he played like a second striker at times, so I was thinking, well, we've got a second striker on the touchline, why don't we play him there? Do you see what I mean? So I was conflicted, Paul, with this one. Do you understand me?
He likes a bit of space in midfield. We saw him when he played against Newcastle in, the first game of the season, where he played as a 10 and they just clogged the middle, and he didn't look good. And he struggled because he doesn't have the soft feet in tight spots. In this game, when he got the ball, okay, there were moments he didn't control it and moments of tight space, but there were also moments when he turned a player, his athleticism, and when he goes past a player, they stay gone past, if that's an actual English expression. He does power up the middle. He does, like, if you're a defender, you're like, oh shit. Now, his final decision needs to be worked on. He needs to be calmer on that. Sometimes he plays it out to his left when there was a man open on the right, kind of thing. Sometimes he doesn't release at the right moment, and he'll grow into that, maybe a bit cooler. Maybe maybe that's something you should always have, but he doesn't quite have it. Still, in a game like this, where it's going to be back and forward, I felt he drove us up the middle of the pitch quite strongly. And, you know, contrast to Elliot's view that he probably shouldn't be pulling on the pitch for us.
Don't throw Elliot on the bus.
Yeah, no,
completely.
Well, this is the time to do it, Clive, because he's not here to defend himself. But I'm not saying I'm right. I think this is an interesting thing to play out. Can he? I see what Elliot's saying. I can see the flaws in his game, but I was pretty excited about this player in pre-season, and I think he's been a bit disappointing this season. Fairly disappointing, I would say. But he still has some significant attributes. But that was kind of no great scientific view on it. I thought he drove us forward, and after about 15 minutes we looked like the best team. And it wasn't because Martinelli was having a hell of a game on the what was he? He was on the left, or Aubameyang on the right, and Aubameyang Lacazette wasn't having the world's greatest game in the first half. I'm not saying none of them did anything, but a big piece of that was, I would say, Willock pushing us forward and Saka on the left, because it certainly wasn't Socrates on the right. God bless him. So, Scott, how would you parse this?
Well, I was actually pretty surprised that, that was one of the things, you mentioned earlier, is that when he plays the 10, he can sometimes get lost. So in this one, he actually had 49 touches. So that puts him right about in the middle of, the other, our other forwards that we had on the pitch. So I thought that was at least positive that he was able to see more of the ball. I think his decision making when he got the ball could have used improvement. I think he, looking at my value added stuff, he, kind of, canceled out his good things with some of the bad decisions he made. So it was kind of a mixed performance. It was nice to see him be able to get more involved instead of kind of disappear or mark himself out. His ability to move and carry and drive with the ball was definitely a positive. But I think, yeah, you're right. I think he needs to make some better decisions when he's actually going to pass the ball. Maybe it is simplify the game, trust your teammates kind of a thing. Don't, force yourself to do everything all by yourself. So I could see some talent in there, but I'm not sure this was his best game overall. And yeah, I do have questions if he's going to be able to stay at this level that's required.
Yeah. Right. Willock off the list. I don't know if you have any strong feelings beyond that on our midfield pairings, Clive, but if not, let's move on to Lacazette. And obviously you've said a lot on Lacazette, but it was an interesting game at this one in that he still doesn't really seem to have found form. He had some good opportunities there, but it does seem to be crying out to play Aubameyang through the centre, and we've committed to Aubameyang on the wing, even to the point of replacing Lacazette with Nketiah instead of Aubameyang last weekend, which I was all for. I kind of buy into us having a system, but less so if we switch Aubameyang to the right, because that's quite a different look from Aubameyang. If we were leaning into Aubameyang always from the left, then my take on last week, the last game, makes a bit more sense to me, which was, hey, we're keeping a particular structure, so we're going to play Nketiah through the middle. Lacazette's still struggling. That's 2 goals in 2 games, so it's a strange kind of struggle. And I don't think he got enough credit on the goal, in that people said, and I think I felt the first time round, hey, he just needed to run in and tap it in. But I've also credited Nketiah for making those runs into the 6-yard box, and noting that Lacazette has maybe shied away from that in recent times, dropping a little deeper and being a little bit too supportive of other players instead of going for the juggler. But if you look at him on the goal, he shuffles to the other side of the centre back and makes sure he's the guy gets deepest into the box off, ironically. A great bit of play from Aubameyang off the left wing, keeping it in play, feeding it to Saka, who again has just this brilliant vision and quality and calmness in the box as he displayed in the previous game. So your take really on Lacazette through without getting into the bigger philosophical debate, the Lacazette, Aubameyang positioning and how you thought Lacazette did in this game?
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about one without talk about the other.
Yeah.
And so we have a decision to make, right? So it's not costing us yet, but it will do soon, right? So, and then we're going to talk about it from a different basis, probably on the back of a defeat. And I cannot help but look at Aubameyang and wonder if we're doing right by him. So in the first half, he was on the right-hand side, working his backside off. He's got his mate inside at centre forward, and he's got an 80-year-old taking his second preferred position. And him as captain has sacrificed himself on the right-hand side. Now you look at that two ways. We had a guy that come from Dortmund that we all thought potentially had a dodgy attitude. Well, his attitude is exemplary. Fantastic, shall we say? I can't say exemplary. Exactly. And I was talking to my mate at work, Jack, today about this, and he said, "It's great. We got a player that wants to do this. It's a showing that I'm the captain. I'm prepared to sacrifice myself. I'm prepared to run up and down the touchline and protect my right back, who's really a centre back. If I'm prepared to do this, you lot better do your shift." That's one argument. The other argument is, I'm 30 years of age, I've got 18 months on my contract, I've scored more goals than anybody else, I'm a top goal scorer, I want to sign another contract, play me where I want to play. Now, he's not saying that, but there are many people that are saying that. And again, I'm conflicted, because I just feel we're not quite using our resources correctly. But that's not Arteta's fault, that's not Aubameyang's fault, that's the club's recruitment strategy, where we bought two centre-forwards for 100 million quid within 6 months of each other. And so we now have a situation where we don't quite have that optimal balance, and we're not optimising our best players. Now, it's working because we've got a great collective spirit at the moment, but I feel it has a limit to the time span by which it's going to work. Now, Lacazette in this game was quite sharp. He was quite progressive. We could all see the confidence has returned. He was a bit better. Should have scored a couple of goals. Scored one. Great goal. Great movement, as you alluded to, Paul. But I can't help but walk away. On Sunday, I felt, can we get Pepe and Aubameyang closer together? And I looked at Aubameyang, and I looked at him, and I'm thinking, we're wasting your legs. We're wasting your meters. You could be even better. You know, we're running him into the ground. He was limping towards the end. And I'm thinking, is this smart? I'm just not sure it is. While recognising I really enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed the win. And it's a collective performance, not about individuals. But special players are special players, and we need to nurture them and need to protect them. And I'm just not sure we're quite getting this right.
Yeah. Scott, to me, we looked a lot better, and we got the goal after Pepe came on. Of course, Ceballos had come on at that point too. But Pepe came on, he played on the right. Aubameyang switched to the left. We still had Lacazette through the middle. Aubameyang and Saka, we've talked about Martinelli and Saka having a good relationship. I didn't think they quite clicked in the same way in this game, but Saka and Aubameyang were key on the goal. Pepe from the left, I thought, really gave us an energy. So kind of, now maybe there was a reason we rested Pepe in this game, because he's played quite a bit. He's begun to play quite a bit under Arteta. Maybe Arteta felt Martinelli was due a game because he'd left him out in the last game. What's your take on the front three in general? How you like us to line up? What's our best front three? I assume maybe you lean into Aubameyang and Pepe on the wings, and why it took us so long to really kind of push it home in this game.
Yeah, so I think if you're going to put Aubameyang on a wing, I think he's got to be on the left-hand side. So if that probably cuts out Martinelli for most games, unless if Aubameyang is going to be through the middle. I think Pepe is starting to get more comfortable within the team, so I really like him out on the right-hand side. I like having the inside forwards that Arsenal are able to kind of do, where they're both able to cut in. So the inverted wingers gives us a little bit more of the goal threat. So we're not so dependent on our center forward to do that. And especially if you're going to play a number 10 that's going to be like a Mesut Ozil, who isn't going to be a second striker, who isn't going to get you a ton of shots. I think you need your shots to come from out wide to be able to get the overall volume that you need. So if we're going to talk about which ways to line up, I think that's kind of my preferred way to do things. I thought Lacazette had a pretty decent game. If we talk about what the job of a striker is to get shots and then try to get shots in dangerous spots. He had 5 shots in this match, and he had the 3 biggest chances. He converted 1, probably should have converted a second one. But overall, I thought that was a pretty good thing. His hold up play in this match wasn't as good as it's been in other times, but I thought that he did pretty well overall doing that. So if what we're looking for from a striker is to be able to get the shots, he did what he was supposed to do. So if he's able to do this in further games, I guess it's makes it harder to justify dropping him, especially if you're able to get at least a pretty good amount out of Aubameyang. Especially if he's going to be from the left-hand side, I think you can make that calculus work.
Yeah. Clive, any take on the front 3 and how we played this game and going forward?
I just think I thought Martinelli was very, very sharp in this game. He looked razor sharp. Didn't have the break, but I do love his first and secondary movement, his ability to just stop. So he's quite sharp, right? But when I see real pace, Thierry Henry had this. He was really quick, but he could stop in like half a yard. He could stop dead. And Martinelli's got this, the ability to run fast, but change direction and stop. I mean, that is incredible. Acceleration, change of pace is better than just pace. So this guy has got something. He's got something. So didn't quite show in this game, but he's got something. His development will be interesting. Aubameyang just looks sweeter on the left-hand side. Martinelli looks sweet on the left-hand side. Saka looks sweet on the left-hand side. Lacazette looks sweet down the middle. Can't play left or right. Pepe owns the right-hand side, and he pulls people with him. And so we have a situation that's developing, and we all know it. It's going to be resolved by contractual issues. It's going to be resolved by our recruitment strategy. But right now, we have a group of players that are on the up. And so I'd much rather that than a group of players that, okay, they're not balanced, but they're playing bad, and they're not doing well. So we may have refound a bit of Lacazette, and obviously young kids are on their way. And if we can just look after Aubameyang's hamstrings and Pepe's growing, we're going to get to where we want to get to, hopefully, by this season. And then in the summer, we need to optimise. That's the key. We need to optimise, and that's going to be the challenge for the transfer window.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to do a little voice of discord here, and maybe it's not my brand, but I actually didn't think the front 3 were doing great until we made the changes. I thought Aubameyang, as we kind of intimated, was much more suited to the left-hand side. I didn't think he was really enjoying it on the right, and I don't think he really gave Socrates the full coverage that he generally gives Saka on the left. And maybe that was part of the design. Maybe part of the reason we played him up the right was because, hey, we've got a centre-back at right-back, so we're kind of covered defensively. But I didn't love it, and I don't think he loved it. I thought Martinelli struggled a little bit in this game. I mean, you can see all the reasons he's good, but maybe if Lacazette had put that chance away that Martinelli set up for him in the first half, maybe my narrative would flip. But this wasn't probably Martinelli's favourite game, and I thought Lacazette still looked, well, although he was busy, he just, when he flopped in the box for looking for the penalty, it just seemed to be of a piece that it's a guy who's still, despite the fact that he's just got a goal, and hopefully this goal puts him over the edge, kind of hits the tilt here to where he's feeling good about himself. I thought Lacazette continued to struggle, and it was maybe the area of the game on the pitch, because I pretty much liked how we played from about 15 minutes onwards. I really think we took it to them, and we were busy up front, but just the guys weren't weren't really hitting it and weren't in position, particularly Aubameyang. I thought, obviously, when Pepe came on and Aubameyang moved to the left, that, and maybe it's a small sample size with Lacazette, but he seemed a lot happier and a lot more positive. And of course he got the goal, so there's a bit of narrative in there. But anyway, we won't split hairs over it. Small sample size, even if it's the full game. But we've seen Arteta slow, redolent, I don't know if that's the right word, but I want to use it anyway, redolent to move to subs early in the game. But he was quite proactive with the subs in this game. Any thoughts as to why he went that way, Clive?
I think I was a bit surprised. I was screaming for Willock to come out because I just felt we were butchering chances on the break, and I just felt we needed a little bit more touches on the ball. So I was thinking, let's get Ceballos on for Willock and then go from there. But I think he brought Ceballos on for Martinelli, which I didn't really see, and then brought Pepe on for Willock. I think that's where he went, and then we
got the Martinelli thing, Clive. And I could be totally wrong, right? Because I haven't seen the whole game again, but I did feel Martinelli was not fully firing, and that was my guess for why he did it. It was kind of an odd one. He brought Willock over to the Martinelli side, right? And Martinelli and Willock was then covering for Saka, but he didn't stick with that one too long. Then he brings on Pepe for Willock, but it was kind of hard to pick through the reasoning there.
Yeah, exactly. So you take a centre mid who can play, really, he's an 8 or a 10 just about, and stick him onto a wide left striker position, and then you keep your best wide left striker on the right hand side covering the centre back, and you sort of waste a few minutes there, and Ceballos comes on, and I really liked Ceballos in this game. I really thought he got to the pace of the game really quickly. I thought his start position was fantastic. He went deep when he had to. He got high when he needed to. He showed for people. He created triangles over the pitch. I thought, yeah, you're liking this. I thought you look really good, and I thought he really showed maybe some of the shortcomings of Willock in that position, which he should do, his experience and where he's played and how many games he's played. But I thought he did that, and then Willock comes off, and then you flip Aubameyang to the left, and you flip Pepe to the right, and suddenly it all looks good.
Yeah, and
it was instant to the eye. Your eye never lies, right? It's instant. Oh, this looks good. So Aubameyang's body language certainly looks better. He knows he's supported by somebody. Suddenly, Saka starts to stride and starts to carry and drive because he knows he's going to get it, right? So everything seems to just flip into place, right? So I'm not sure on Arteta's substitute strategy yet, but why should he be perfect? I'm not. When I make subs at the weekend, and I'm 106, he's only 36, right? So it's a matter of it's going to come in time, and the more the pattern gets put in place, I think people know their slots. I just think it becomes something that he grows into. But hey, look, I thought they both made an impact in their own way, and it led us to dominate the last few minutes of the game.
Yeah, that was my feeling. He got the first sub wrong, but he fixed it with the second sub, and suddenly all the players on the field made sense to me. What are your thoughts, Scott? And then add in the third sub, the Maitland-Niles finally getting on the pitch.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit late, and I agree with Clive there that I thought that Willock was probably the guy that I would have probably made the choice for with the first sub, but I guess he wanted to give him a little bit more time to play. But yeah, I think that just the overall things seemed to gel a little bit more. We had a little bit more of a connection between all the players when Ceballos came on. I thought that Pepe looks, just much more comfortable starting from the right than Aubameyang does. So it just gives the team more balance, and just you could see that players feel like they're in their right position, and it was a little bit more comfortable. So
did he need to make the two subs at the same time though to get this effect? I mean, logically he did, but was there another way to go? I mean, he needed to get Aubameyang on the left and Pepe on the right, and Ceballos through the middle really to get this setup. and you couldn't do that with one move for obvious reasons. And to me, it's either Aubameyang or Martinelli on the left, and I still like Ceballos. I thought maybe Willock was better than most people did in this game, but I like Clive. I love what Ceballos brings and gives, so I was glad to see him on the pitch too. But he probably needed two subs at 60 minutes to get this effect.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely could have done that, instead of waiting the additional 15 to bring on Pepe. But, in the end, it worked out. He got to where he needed to. In general, I think that the coaches should be maybe a little bit more aggressive instead of waiting so much time. Maybe not quite Emery aggressive where you bring on lots of subs at halftime, but in that 60-minute range, I think is good. You have that. The bonus of having the rested legs against more tired legs, and you can have more time to take advantage of that, where you don't have that extra 50 minutes on your legs of running, and especially in attackers. I think that is something that is positive that you could probably exploit a little bit more as a manager. At least that's what the data and research has kind of suggested to us. So that has actually been kind of the one complaint I've had about Arteta, is that he's been a little bit Wenger-ish in that waiting so long to get his subs out. But if the improvements have outweighed these kind of quibbles that I have.
Gotcha. So it was a good performance, I thought, overall. I think it was a tricky, dangerous fixture.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. And again, I know I say this a lot, but I enjoyed it a lot more the second time round. I actually think we actually played good, believe it or not. And we take it forward. We got the goal away from home, which was key. We probably should have had 2 goals. And I think there's a bit of revisionism sometimes. We look at the Newcastle game and we bash them 4-0, but they could have scored 1 or 2 before we did. They could have scored 2 in the second half. People say, oh, well, Olympiacos could have scored a couple against us. Newcastle could have scored goals in either half. You ride the dragon in every game, and then you revise it afterwards, and it was like, oh, we're always going to beat Newcastle 4-0. We're always going to beat Olympiacos 1-0 with a little bit of time between you and the result. But that's the nature of football. They had their moments. They could have had us, especially early on, and kind of rearranged this game on us. But I think overall you can look back on that. Once we settled into it, this was always going to be a tricky fixture. And generally I think there's a lot to be pleased with in the performance. And it'll give us confidence and build. And we haven't been beaten for a while. And we've got a bunch of draws, and now we've got a couple of wins. Which leans into the weekend in a very interesting juxtaposition. Us and Everton basically around the same point in the table. Both brought in new managers. Arteta could always have been a candidate for the Everton job, and we could have been a candidate to get in What is his face?
Carlo.
Yeah. Carlo Ancelotti. And depending on your preference for style of manager, did you want the experienced European suave sophisticate? Did you want the new guy on the block with the new ideas, the Pep understudy who's now going to break off and do his own thing on the road and try new stuff and take a risk? Well, we went with Arteta. They went with Carlo Ancelotti. They got our sloppy seconds by all accounts. And now we face them at the weekend, and many people think Everton have had the better start. But we're coming up for air now, so and it's at home, gives us that little advantage here. How do you see this one shaking out, Clive? How do you think we'll approach the game, and how do you feel on we went with Arteta, they went with Ancelotti?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. It's a little bit like Mourinho as well, isn't it? With Spurs, we sort of know that manager. We know what he is, and in a strange way, there's many people wanted us to do the unknown. I struggled with that, particularly the first time round, but not supposed to second time round with Arteta. But I tell you what, I'm so convinced about him now, and I'd much rather be us with upside and unknown, versus known, and we've seen it all before. I find it. We all live our lives. We work. We do whatever we do, and we want our football to be exciting. We want to learn things. We want to be part of something with foresight, with forward thinking, and we can align ourselves to it, right? And I'm starting to feel that again. I'm starting to feel less nervous. I'm starting to enjoy the games and a little bit more, and that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And I think if we get more and more people enjoying it, it's gonna be great. There's a little clip today that is on Ian Wright's Instagram, I think it was, of the away fans.
Yeah, that was great.
And it just made me think, you know what? I'm somebody who's quite an occasional goer to games, but I may be increasing those occasions because it just feels good. And if I feel that, then there'll be less red seats on the TV screen staring at us because it feels better. We analyse it, when we do this podcast and we share our thoughts. But the feeling is starting to come back. I'm telling you, so Sunday is really key to that, because if we were to lose to Ancelotti, then maybe a few people would say, well, we should have gone that route. And there are people that are not convinced, and that's just the nature of football. So I'm hoping we win, because I am convinced about this manager, and I really do think we've got some really bright days ahead. So a very important day from that perspective, that we're still validating what we feel, and that process is not over yet.
Yeah. Now, for me, Arteta has the it factor. He has something a little special, but time will tell on that one. But he's fixed so many... the speed at which he fixed players is what astounds me. It's not like... I thought Mustafi, even from Arteta's comments, I thought it was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a process. He fixed him by the second half of Chelsea somehow, by getting the team behind him, by using Mustafi's mistake and saying to those players, look guys, you all make mistakes, but what this is all about is backing your fellow players and bailing them out. And he used that to solidify the team. And I don't know what voodoo magic he works with each player, but he seems to have gotten a tune out of every single player almost immediately.
To that end, Paul, there was a moment when Mustafi played a crazy ball from deep in his area into the edge of the area, I think, to Guendouzi. It was the wrong pass. But as it went wrong, the reaction to cover that mistake was like frenzied. Yeah. And I thought, that's great. It didn't cost him. It didn't embarrass him. It was a Mustafi moment. But this time, everyone bailed him out. And I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah, better distances, better structure, better understanding. And just better mindset individually and as a team is paying off. So, just before I switch to Scott and ask him on the Ancelotti and the Everton lineup, the video you were talking about, Clive, that's the one with Ian Wright's in the stands. He's kind of on his own, and somebody's got taken a video from behind him on their cell phone, and the Arsenal fans are singing the Ian Wright song. And Ian Wright's shouting, "I love you" at them. And it's just like, it's magic. It's like basically a couple of thousand people singing to Ian Wright and him shouting, "I love you." And like the club's just, the mood of the club, as you alluded to, it's on the way up, and people are enjoying their football and enjoying being supporters again, and it's a beautiful thing. Scott, Carlo Ancelotti, don't ruin it for us now. Carlo Ancelotti at the weekend, Everton. How did you feel about the connection, the links to Carlo Ancelotti and Arsenal, and how do you feel about the fact that we went the Arteta way and it feels like we had the choice?
Well, so I always was leaning towards Arteta as the guy that I wanted. I felt that he's the guy with the upside. You know what you're going to get with Carlo, and he's a very good coach, and you can see that he's done very well with Everton. I think even looking at the Napoli team since he's left, they have not gotten better. So he was definitely, I don't think, the problem with that team. So I think that Carlo is a very good coach. I think he would have been good at Arsenal, but I don't think that given what Arsenal are trying to do, you really have to go for that upside, and you have to, take a big swing at somebody who can, not just be good, but can be very good. And so far, the early stuff on Arteta hasn't changed my mind on that. I think that Everton are doing well. They have some of the highest points. I think really only Liverpool has more points since he took over. But then you also look at the schedule that they have played, and it's been a relatively easy schedule. They have Burnley, Newcastle twice. They've played Brighton. They've played West Ham, Watford, and Crystal Palace. So that is a who's who of not great teams. So they have been winning games, but they have not really necessarily been challenged. So their upcoming schedule is very tough. So they face Arsenal, then Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool. They get a break at Norwich. Then they have Leicester and Tottenham. So this really will probably be the stretch that determines who is going to, really have a chance at that top 5 spot now that Manchester City are banned. So I really do feel pretty confident that Arsenal can get a result this weekend. My model actually has us about 50% to win. Looked at the 538, and they have us at 42%. So I think there's a good chance that Arsenal come out with 3 points from this. Hopefully that we can keep our defensive record going, get a 4th clean sheet in a row, really just get the confidence going. I think that things are starting to look good for Arsenal, and I hope that, we're able to continue that.
I thought you said your mom had us at 50%. I'm like, I don't give a crap what your mom thinks. Is that where you're getting your stats from? Turns out you were saying model. But look, life comes at you fast. Everton's got quite a run in. I think we've got a reasonably okay schedule through February and March, build some momentum. So we'll see where it's all at there, but should be an interesting game. Hopefully a fairly open game. And you never know what your lineup's going to be with Arteta and Arsenal at the moment. So on to the weekend. Well, listen, thanks guys. Let's wrap up here. Thanks for everybody for listening. Elliot will be back next time round, I'm sure. Thanks for bearing with us, and up the Arsenal.